Hello, my name is Joshua Gabi. I welcome you to How Plants Get Their Food. How plants get their food. Before we continue, I would like us to look at this diagram here. We can see that we have the sun. Of course, the sun is providing sunlight energy. And here we have the first stage of light harvesting, which is harvested by chlorophyll. And then from there we have the light dependent stage. This is a stage whereby the energy absorbed splits the water. And when it splits 12 molecules of water, we get 6 molecules of oxygen and 24 hydrogen atoms. Then these hydrogen atoms are in now the light independent stage. They will combine with carbon dioxide, whereby carbon dioxide is going to be reduced, and then we shall form our glucose and 6 molecules of water. So that's how plants get their food in brief. In the 17th century, a Belgian physician, Helmont, set up an experiment in which he planted a willow sapling in a yielded amount of soil. So this was an experiment which was carried out by a physician, Helmont, and he planted the willow sapling in a weighed amount of soil. So the amount of soil here which was used was 90.72 kilograms of soil. We want to see why he carried out this experiment and what results did he get. The soil was watered, but nothing else was added. After 5 years, the tree had gained 74 kilograms in weight, but the soil had lost only 52 grams. So in his experiment, which took over 5 years, he used the soil of 90.72 kilograms of soil, and he planted the willow sapling plant. And this plant was watered only without adding anything else. After 5 years, they found out that the tree had gained 74 kilograms in weight, but the soil had lost only 52 grams. Now I think you can know where we are going. You have a soil weighing 90.72 kilograms, and you plant your seedlings. They grow into a tree after 5 years. The soil was only watered but nothing else was added. After 5 years, the tree had gained a weight of 74 kilograms, and the soil had lost only 52 kilograms. Now the question is, where did those 74 kilograms come from? Van Helmont concluded that the tree had gained 74 kilograms of new growth from water alone. Now, because there was watering only, Van Helmont, for him, he concluded that this tree gained these 74 kilograms from water alone. That is what he concluded, because it could not have come from the soil. Because if you look at the soil, we had 90.72 kilograms, and at the end we had 90.20 kilograms, meaning that it had lost something like 52 grams only. So where did that 74 kilograms of that tree come from? So that's why Van Helmont concluded that this weight of the tree might have come from the water which was provided. Van Helmont's experiment was effective in showing that plant's food did not come from the soil. So this experiment shows that this plant which we have got has not come from the soil. Why? Because at the beginning, this was the weight of the soil, 90.72 kilograms. And at the end, we have 90.20 kilograms. And the tree had gained 75 kilograms. Yet the soil that was lost was only 52 grams. So which means that the plant's food was not coming from the soil. But he had overlooked the fact that air was available to the plant as well as water. So what he didn't see was that in this experiment, as water was being provided only, air was always available. So he did not put into consideration of the air, because for him he was only providing water, and he overlooked that fact that the plant was as well receiving air. Could it be that the plant made 74 kilograms of material from just air and water? That's a question. Do you think that the plant made that 74 kilograms of material from just air and water? What do you think? That's a question posed to you. This might seem unlikely, but we know that the plant indeed make their own food from carbon dioxide from the air and the water from the soil. So that one is well known right now, that plants make their food from carbon dioxide, which comes from air, and water, which comes from the soil. Animals, they get their food by eating plants. Other animals, for example, the carnivores, for them they eat animals, and the herbivores, they eat plants. So we have seen that plants make their own food, but animals, for them, they depend on plants. And those ones that feed on plants, we call them herbivores. And those that depend or feed on other animals, we call them carnivores. So here we have our animals: antelope, squirrel, frog, and a bird. All these are animals and birds, mammals. They feed by eating on plants. They also feed on plant products, and others feed on other animals. Plants, for them, they make their own food. And we have said that they make their own food by combining carbon dioxide, which comes from the air, with water, and also dissolved salts, which come from the soil. So we know that the plants make their own food. And when they make their own food, this food is made from air, which is coming, carbon dioxide, which is coming from the air. And then they also make it from nutrients like water and the mineral salts that are dissolved in the soil. Plants do not get their food from the soil. So that one, all of us now, we know that plants don't get their food from the soil. The food of plants is made from carbon dioxide and water, but the food is not coming from the soil. The first stage by which plants make food is called photosynthesis. That is the first stage by which plants make food. Most fungi and bacteria get their food by breaking down organic matter. Such plants and animals remains, we call them detritus. So we have the fungi, like for example the mushroom, and some bacteria. For them, they get their food from organic matter. And those organic matter can be plant remains, or they can be animal remains, which we call detritus. Detritus, those are refuse or remain from plants and animals. And those remains, it's where the fungi and bacteria get their food. They then absorb the soluble breakdown product. We know that for example, the fungi here, it will produce enzymes which will be produced in the detritus, and that enzyme will digest the plant and animal remains. After digesting them, then we get the dissolved soluble food nutrients which are going to be absorbed by the fungi and the bacteria. So for them, they absorb soluble breakdown products. These organisms are called detritivores. They are called detritivores. They get their food from detritus. They are called detritivores. The name photosynthesis is derived from photo, which means light, and synthesis, which means building up. So light building up. So photosynthesis is coming from photo, which means light, and synthesis, which is building up. Plants synthesize their food with the aid of sunlight. So we have the sun somewhere, and that sun is giving sunlight energy, and this energy is absorbed by the plant, and then the plant can now manufacture its food. Green plants, they take in carbon dioxide, which comes from the air. So the carbon dioxide, which is coming from the air, will enter into the plant, and then the green plants will manufacture their food. Then they take in water, and this water comes from the soil. So they are going now to absorb water, which is coming from the soil, and they will take in this water with the carbon dioxide that has come from the atmosphere. Then they will manufacture food and also give us oxygen. The plants combine carbon dioxide with water, and they make sugar, which is glucose. So we have seen that they have used carbon dioxide, which is coming from the atmosphere, and then they are also combining it with water, which is coming from the soil, and then we get a sugar, which is glucose. Six molecules of carbon dioxide combine with 6 molecules of water, and we get 1 molecule of glucose and 6 molecules of oxygen. The 6 molecules of carbon dioxide, these ones combine with 6 molecules of water to make 1 molecule of glucose and 6 molecules of oxygen. Oxygen is a byproduct in this reaction. So this reaction, we end up producing glucose, but also we end up getting a byproduct, which is oxygen. When a plant is photosynthesizing, it takes in carbon dioxide and gives out oxygen. That one we know, that a plant carrying out photosynthesis will take in carbon dioxide and it will be producing oxygen, like the way we are seeing it here. Carbon dioxide is taken in and we are producing oxygen. So the plant will take in carbon dioxide and it will give out oxygen. Plants which live in ponds, streams, etc., these are immersed in the water they need for photosynthesis. These plants which are submerged in ponds, in streams, they are immersed in the water which they need to carry out photosynthesis. It takes energy to make carbon dioxide combine with water. So when we look at our plant here, you will see that it is receiving sunlight energy, which is coming from the sun. It is receiving carbon dioxide, which is coming from the air. And then it is also receiving water, which is coming from the soil. Now the water will go up and then it will find the carbon dioxide from the air. Then they will combine in the presence of this sunlight. Then we shall be able to make food. The energy comes from the sunlight. The energy is absorbed and used by a substance called chlorophyll. So sunlight energy comes from the sun and it is absorbed by chlorophyll, which we find in the leaf. And it is this sunlight energy which is going to be used to combine carbon dioxide with water. The carbon dioxide comes from the air. The water, this one comes from the soil. Then the energy, this one comes from sunlight. Without sunlight, photosynthesis could not take place. So if we don't have sunlight energy, then there will not be photosynthesis taking place, because sunlight is the one that provides energy that combines carbon dioxide and water. Without photosynthesis, then the plants cannot survive. So if we don't have photosynthesis taking place, then this plant will not also survive. So without plants, most animals would die, because ultimately animals depend on plants for their food. So if we don't have the sunlight energy, that means that we shall not also have plants. And if we don't have plants, that means that the animals are going to die, because they depend on plants for their food. Sunlight energy, this one is taken up by the plants, and the plants are going to be eaten by the herbivores. Then the herbivores will be eaten by the carnivore. So you can see the interdependence depending on the sunlight energy. If it does not exist, then these other organisms in the food chain, they are going to die. These cells that we are seeing, they are called the palisade cells, and they are present in the upper layer of a leaf where most sunlight is absorbed. So the cells that we have here, these ones are palisade cells. These cells, we find them in the upper layer of the leaf where most of the sunlight is absorbed from. If you look at these cells, you will see that they have chloroplasts, they have a cytoplasm, they have got a vacuole, they have a nucleus, and they have got a cell wall. But you will see they have very many chloroplasts, and these chloroplasts are the ones that are responsible for the absorption of sunlight energy. The chloroplasts are present in the cytoplasm of living cells. So you look here, you will see that our cytoplasm is this one here. But you can see in the cytoplasm, it is where the chloroplasts are embedded. That's where they are hidden, in the cytoplasm. It's not only the leaves that contain chlorophyll. Any green part of the plant leaves, leaf stalk, stem, sepals will contain chloroplasts. So it is not only the leaves that contain chlorophyll, but any green part of the plant like the leaves, leaf stalk, stems, sepals, all of them, they contain chloroplasts. And chlorophyll is a green colored chemical. Chlorophyll is a green colored chemical. Chlorophyll is found in chloroplasts, which are found in the cytoplasm. And they are the ones that make the parts of the plants to appear green. Chlorophyll is present in leaves of green plants. The chlorophyll in the cells is packaged in two tiny structures called chloroplasts. So they are those small structures which we find in the cytoplasm. Those structures are called chloroplasts, and they are the ones that are carrying the green substance which we call chlorophyll. All the reactions that combine carbon dioxide and water, they take place in the chloroplasts. So the reactions which are taking place that are combining carbon dioxide and water, they take place in the chloroplasts. Here what we have our cell here, cut longitudinally. We can see inside we have the vacuole. This is the nucleus. This is the cytoplasm, cell wall, and then chloroplasts. But all the reactions that are involved in combining water and carbon dioxide, they take place in the chloroplast. So there is sunlight which is received by chlorophyll, and it is used to split up water to provide hydrogen atoms which will react with carbon dioxide and produce a sugar. So in the chloroplast, carbon dioxide and water combine to make sugar. The water travels from the roots through the stem into the leaf in a system of vessels. Water will move from the soil. When it moves from the soil, it will enter into the roots. From the roots, it will go to the stems to the leaves, until when it reaches the point where it is going to be used. But water is going to be carried in vessels. And these vessels, they carry water. The carbon dioxide, this one diffuses into the leaf through tiny pores called stomata, and diffuse through the air spaces between the cells. So when we look at our plant here, you can see at this point here we have a stoma which is open, and it allows in carbon dioxide to move into the plant. Then it will diffuse into the air spaces between the cells, and it goes to other parts of the cells that are going to use it to combine it with water to form sugar. The palisade cells trap most of the sunlight. So here we have the palisade cells. These palisade cells are located on the upper surface of the leaf, and they are just covered by a single layer of epidermis which is transparent. So this epidermis allows sunlight to pass through, and that sunlight is going to be absorbed by the chloroplasts that are in the palisade cell. So when you look at the upper part of the leaf and the lower part of the leaf, you will see that the upper part of the leaf has more chloroplasts compared to the lower parts. This is because the upper part is the one that is exposed to sunlight energy. Therefore, the cells have very many palisade cells. Two glucose molecules combine to make a molecule of sucrose. So we have glucose here in the middle. This glucose can be converted to other sugars to form fruits. This glucose can provide energy to the developing plantlet. This glucose can be stored in form of starch. This glucose can be used to make up cellulose, which makes the cell wall. And it can also be used to make up proteins that are used to make the cytoplasm. So that is the glucose. This is 2 molecules of glucose will give us 1 molecule of starch or disaccharide and water. This is sucrose. This is sucrose. Sucrose. This is glucose and water. Glucose made by the chloroplast is used to provide energy for the chemical processes in the cell by cell respiration. So the glucose that has been made by chloroplasts is going to be used, is still in the cell to provide energy for the chemical processes that are taking place in the cell. The glucose is turned into sucrose and transported to other parts of the plant. So this glucose which has been manufactured, one of its uses is going to be converted into sucrose, which is going to be transported to other parts of the plant. Glucose is turned into starch and stored in the cells as starch grains. So we are looking at glucose is converted into starch and it is stored as grains. It can be stored as starch in potatoes and so on. In darkness, the starch is changed back into glucose and transported out of the cell. So that is in darkness, the starch is going to be converted into glucose, then it will be transported out of the cell. Plants need more than carbohydrates. So for the plants, for their survival, they will need more other nutrients than only carbohydrates. They need proteins for making new cytoplasm and cells for growth. So the plants, they need to grow, and growth requires making new cells which contains the cytoplasm, which is made up of protein. So they also need protein for growth, as well as they need carbohydrates for energy. The proteins, to make proteins, the plant combines glucose with compounds of nitrogen or nitrates. So the plant can make proteins by combining glucose with nitrogen compounds, especially nitrates, and it makes proteins. Carbohydrates may be oxidized to provide energy for chemical reactions. So the carbohydrates, that is starch, glucose, which is in the plant, can be now broken down, or what we call oxidation, or oxidized, to provide energy, and this energy is going to be used in the chemical reactions that are taking place in the cell. The carbohydrates may be turned into starch and stored in storage organs such as potatoes and panis. So the carbohydrates may again be turned into starch, and then they are stored in storage organs like the potato tubers, like fruits, and so on. The carbohydrates, they may be turned into cellulose. This one is used to build up the cell wall. So we have the cell walls. Cell walls are made up of a compound called cellulose. And the carbohydrates like glucose are the ones that can be converted into cellulose, which is going to make the cell wall. The carbohydrates may be combined with nitrogen compounds like nitrates and make amino acids, which are combined to make proteins. So we can have carbohydrates like glucose making proteins from amino acids that have been made by combining nitrates with the glucose, and then they make proteins which can be used in the manufacture of the cytoplasm and other cell organelles. When salts such as potassium nitrate dissolve in water, it separates into two ions, that is potassium ions and nitrate ions. Now those are salts. Salts are coming from the soil, and they are also needed by the plant. So if we have potassium nitrate, this one dissolves in water and it separates into potassium ions and then also nitrate ions. And these ions are going to be taken in by the plant. The potassium ions carries a positive charge. They have a positive charge which is there. And the nitrate ions, these ones, they carry a negative charge, which is that one there. These ions move freely and independently in the soil water, and it is this form that they are taken up by the plants. So the plants are going to take up the nitrates in form of ions, which are moving freely and independently, dissolved in water. They will be taken up by the plants. as well as applying to the potassium ions. The nitrate ions are present also in the soil, dissolved in water. Now the plant will take up the nitrate ions in the soil water. Then the nitrate ions are conducted through the roots to the stem, and then they are taken to the leaves. In the leaves, these nitrate ions and glucose are going to be combined and they will make proteins. Proteins, which we have said can be used in making up of the cytoplasm and other cell organelles. This process is called assimilation. This process is called assimilation, using of glucose to make proteins. The proteins are needed for making the cell structures, such as the cytoplasm, the nucleus, chloroplasts, and many other structures. So the proteins are going to make the cytoplasm, they will make the nucleus, they make the chloroplast, Golgi body, mitochondria, and many other plant structures are going to be made by or from the proteins. Then the plant can grow only by making new cells and cell structures. So a plant to be growing, it needs to be making new cells and new cell structures. So it needs the proteins, it will need the carbohydrates, which we term as food, to be used to make new cells and new cell structures in order for that plant to grow. Strictly speaking, it's not nitrate salts that are taken up, but nitrate ions. It is not the salts that are taken up, but it is the ions, nitrate ions, but not salts. When a salt such as potassium nitrate is dissolved in water, it splits up into positively charged potassium ions and negatively charged nitrate ions. So it is the nitrate ions and potassium ions that are going to be taken up, but not as a salt potassium nitrate. So potassium nitrate becomes potassium ions and nitrate ions. The plant may take up either potassium or both of the ions, potassium and nitrate. The nitrates, these ones are not the only ions that the plant needs taken in from the soil. There are other ions that are taken from the soil by the plant. They need phosphates, plants need sulfate, they need ions, they need potassium, they need magnesium ions. All those ones are needed by the plant. This is the reason why farmers and gardeners, they add fertilizers to the soil, because fertilizers contain very many ions which are needed by the plant, and they may be absent in the soil or not in enough quantity. These fertilizers, usually they contain nitrates, they contain phosphates, and potassium, or what we always call as the NPK. They contain those nitrate, potassium, and the phosphate ions. Nitrates are needed for making proteins. Those are the nitrates. For them, they are needed for making proteins. The phosphates, these ones are needed for DNA. DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid, for chemical reactions involving energy release. So those are the phosphates. They are needed for DNA and for chemical reactions that involve energy release. Then the sulfates, these ones are needed for some proteins. There are some proteins that need sulfate for their formation, but mostly proteins are coming from nitrates. Iron is needed for certain enzyme reactions. Iron is going to be needed for certain enzyme reactions. Then magnesium is needed for making chlorophyll. Magnesium is needed for making chlorophyll. Now these are experimental strips. They are experimental strips of wheat. A varying amount and type of fertilizers have been added to the soil to see which gives the best plant growth. So you can see these different strips of wheat which have been grown. They are of different type. They have added different types of fertilizers. You can see them, and you can see how they are growing because they have added their different fertilizer for a long period of time. They want to find out which fertilizer gives the best plant growth. Some of these plots have received different types of fertilizers. Some have had only manure added to the soil. Some had neither manure nor fertilizer for many years. So if you look at them, you can see the rate of growth is differing. That is because some of them have manure, others have neither manure, others have fertilizers, others don't have anything at all. So when we look at the average yearly wheat yields in the experimental plots, this is what we are seeing. You can see these are kilograms per hectare, kilograms produced per hectare. If you look here, the field that were added with manure, they had around 750 kilograms, 750 kilograms of yields per hectare. Those ones which had, these ones had no manure at all. Then those ones that had manure, you can see they produced around, this is farmyard manure, 2,000 kilograms per hectare. Then those ones, they added fertilizer, they rose up to around 250 kilograms per hectare. Then there are those ones that were given fertilizers without magnesium. They were around there 2,000 kilograms per hectare. Then there are other plots where they placed fertilizers without phosphate. Those ones produced around 1,400 kilograms per hectare. Then we had those ones that did not have nitrate, but they had other nutrients. They were around 1,000 kilograms per hectare. So the chemical fertilizers contain all the mineral ions that are needed by the plant. So our chemical fertilizer here contains all the minerals that are needed by the plant. That's why we are seeing its yield is higher than all the other fertilizers added in different plots. The other fertilizers are lacking in one of the essential ions. So we saw here, this one was lacking magnesium, this one was lacking phosphate, and this one was lacking nitrate. But they are all fertilizers. Which of these mineral ions appear to be the most important? Now, when you look at them, which one do you think is the most important mineral that is needed? From here, you can see that the most important mineral needed is the nitrate, because you can see its absence causes a very big decline in the yields compared to the absence of the magnesium and the phosphate ions. Hello, my friends. Thank you very much for participating in how plants get their food. Please do like, share, and subscribe.